the topic we are talking about today is, excuse me, is my child gifted? Basically, it's an introduction to what is giftedness and what is talent development, which is the focus of my of GERC. So this is what we're going. Oops, sorry. So a bit about me. So I'm Dr. Juliana Tay. I have a PhD in gifted education from Purdue University. I focus on gifted education with a special interest in art, visual arts, giftedness. While I'm over at Purdue University, I work with the Gifted Education Resource and Research Institute, where I'm the coordinator for youth programs. So basically, I coordinate summer enrichment programs, Saturday enrichment programs for young children aged 4 years all the way to primary 5. So that's the age group I normally work with. I'm in charge of designing the program for them, working with the teachers to teach the teachers how to work with the kids, talking to parents. We also develop programs to work with parents and children together so that the parents are equipped to work with, to help to develop their children's potential. But before all that, in my previous lifetime, I'm also a subject head. I'm an art teacher, where I started with Marsiling Secondary School, and then I moved on to teach at Raffles Institution, where I worked for 10 years in Singapore before heading over to the US to do my PhD. So what is the GERC approach? This is something that we are trying to develop here in Singapore, especially in Asia. A lot of times, if you think about gifted education in Singapore, you will think of the test all the elementary school kids, the primary school kids will sit for at primary 3 to check whether they are gifted, and then if they are, they'll go for the GEP program. However, in GERC, we believe that gifts and talents come in many forms, and they do not manifest only at primary 3. They are there in the children, and our mission is to provide research-based strategies and resources. So these are all research-based strategies that we have developed over time, over years by the field, to parents and educators in their journeys to help their children realize the gifts and talents, to recognize that there's potential in all children, and all we need to do is provide them with the opportunity to learn and to develop. So the topics we're going to cover, I'm going to jump a bit here and there. So the topics we're going to cover today is this. First, we're going to talk about gifted children. Is your child one of them? Characteristic and behaviors. Can your child do that? Some issues and concerns with gifted children. Having a child that's gifted is not all fine and dandy. There are things that you need to work on, and there are things that you will be concerned about. And what are the actions and resources that you can have today to help your child or children? So think about a child with gifts and talents. I'll ask you, what does a child look like? What kind of things can the child do? How does the child behave around other adults and other children? Are they different? Are they the same? With that image in mind, a lot of you will have your own idea of what gifted children is. And here I'm to tell you, gifted children with gifts and talents are from all cultures, backgrounds, races, ethnicity, socio-economic status, etc., etc., etc. They are not predefined by a certain race. There's no one race that's more gifted than the other. You're not defined by, if you're rich, you're gifted, you're poor, you're not so much gifted. They're not defined because they're male, they're more gifted, they're female, they're less gifted. They are in all shapes and sizes, and they are all different. They have advanced abilities and talents and skills, all development. But here's the problem. Not all of them will show it. Not all of them will have it in them. Not all of the children who have the potential develop those potential later. And we'll go through some of these issues later that prevent the children from developing their potential. Some of them may be quick learners, but a lot of them simply love learning because they want to learn. That's what that drives them. There's an interest and the quest to learn things. So what can these children do? Some of them may be talented in one area or more than one. You have children who are talented in math, and along with it, some of them will be talented in science as well. They may have advanced language abilities. Some will be artistically talented or musically talented. And what about the people who are talented in leadership? If you think about the GEP, again, that I mentioned about Singapore background, if you think of the GEP, it only tests you your language, math, and science. And that is very rooted in academics. Students who are gifted in leadership, students who are gifted in music, physical physical development, those will not have the sportsmanship. Those will not be identified traditionally through those measures. So how can we develop this group of children's potential as well? Simply because they are not recognized by society in the traditional way doesn't mean they are not gifted. Some of them may be interested in one subject very deeply. They are very passionate about the subject they are interested in. But many of them can be interested in many different subjects. They could have a wide reading range. They could, pursue many interests. Today, they want to know more about the weather. Tomorrow, they want to know more about plants. It's up to the child. Remember, the basic driving force is the quest to learn, the interest in learning. They are high achieving. Often you will see them achieving well in tests, in exams, doing all the different tasks they are supposed to do, but not always. Okay, we'll talk about this as well later, where children who are gifted, but they do not test well. There are different issues that comes along with it. But why is it that a lot of parents will assume, or teachers even will assume, that if a child is gifted, they will test well, they will perform well. But this is not always the case. They are motivated to learn, like as I mentioned earlier. A lot of them just is passionate about learning. They just want to know more. They just want to learn more. But they could also be perfectionist and self-critical. If you're a parent of a gifted child, this is something that you may experience, where your child struggles with finishing the work because it's never good enough. They are worried about the things they create. They are worried about not getting it right, just right. They want it to be as perfect as possible. And because of this mental issues that they have with themselves, the high level of self-criticism, some of the gifted children has a habit of not submitting the work. They have a habit of not completing the work. It's not because they cannot do it, but a lot of time it's more of they are not happy with what they have produced. So how can we work with the children to help them overcome this mental block that they are experiencing? Another thing that you need to think about is they are developing at a different rate, not only from their peers, but also within themselves. There's a sense of asynchronous development in them. So for example, I can give you is children who are gifted in language, speak fluent, verbal, fantastic, could use very expressive words at a young age. However, when it comes to mathematics, they are just performing like a kindergartner. They are just performing like a normal primary 1 students. They are on par. Whereas the language, they could be highly advanced, like a primary 6. They speak with that kind of fluency. But the sense of development is not rounded. So when we say gifted child, I prefer the term children with gifts and talents. But when we mention gifted child, my next question will be gifted in what? Because a child can be overall gifted, general, but a lot of time you do not see that. Most of the time you see them gifted in certain areas. And what areas are we talking about? Gifted in language, gifted in arts, gifted in music, what is it? And that area is where the potential is. And that's the area where you may want to consider pushing and helping the child develop. And then where they are on normal peer, on par with their peers, is where you can support them to address the uncomfortable, the lack of comfort they have with the situation, where they could think of something, but they could not express it or talk about it in a normal way. And also, there's also a group of students, we will call them twice exceptional. These are students who are diagnosed with learning disability, but at the same time, they are also gifted. So students who are autistic or on the spectrum or having Asperger's, a lot of times I've worked with some of the students who are this manners, but they are also highly verbal. They are also highly advanced. They are also they are also thirst for knowledge. So a lot of times the twice exceptional kids, they sort of normalize themselves because they are so gifted, but because they have a learning disability, the giftedness often is hidden, and the teachers or parents who sometimes will focus on what they cannot do, where the learning disability parts comes in. And this is where we want to work with the parents and children to see where is their gift, where are their gifts, and how can we help them to develop that potential, at the same time provide them with the service that they need to control or to manage their learning disability. So what about my child? That will be a question that you may have right now. My first few things, if you want to think of your child, where are the gifts and potential is, I will ask you, is your child a keen and alert observer? Do they usually see more or get more out of a story and movie? Are they the kind who will tell you more stories or think further than what is presented? Are they able to explain his or her thoughts clearly and concisely? What are the words they use? Are they expressive? Are they using big words that is beyond their age group? Are they able to use alternative processes? A lot of these children are very creative in getting things or doing things. When they see obstacles, are they able to overcome the obstacles to get what they want? Can they come up with alternatives? Can they come up with different ways of processing things? Are they leaders within their own, within his or her age group or peers in their group? Are they the leaders? Are they the person who think about what to do, plan the game, organize the group? Are they the one who drives what the group does? These are things to consider. Where your child is gifted, in which area the potential may lies. So what are some of the challenges for children with gifts and talents, and especially for their parents? I mentioned earlier about asynchronous development. There's 4 areas that you want to think about. The child mental age. The child could be mentally developed, very advanced. This is where my experience with working with young children comes in. Like I said, I work with age 4 to primary 5 students, and I run summer programs for them. Often I have parents calling me up and telling me that their kindergarteners or the 5-year-old that they have is tested gifted, certified gifted. They want to put the child in the class with the primary 2 students. My answer to that will always be a no. Not because I doubt the child's mental ability, but there is a development difference between a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old and a primary 2 student, an 8-year-old. A 5-year-old will not be able to hold a scissors properly. They will not be able to hold a pencil and write the way an 8-year-old would be able to. And they will not have the attention span or the physical ability to hold long hours like an 8-year-old. The 5-year-old will need regular breaks and naps, whereas the 8-year-old could go on for a longer stretch. So there is this asynchronous development between the mental age and the physical development. And this is something that parents of gifted children need to consider. Simply because your child is mentally very advanced doesn't mean that they are suited to be advanced into next level class. It might be a detriment to them, especially at a young age where they are physically developing. When they go into a class like this and they couldn't handle the physical demand of the class, holding a pair of scissors or pencils and paying attention are just a very basic skill that you assume a primary 1 student to have and be able to handle. So this is where we will tell the parents, don't worry about where we put the students. They are going to be in a kindergarten class because the lesson is structured in a way that is challenging to the students' mental development, but not to the physical development. I will have the support staff. I will have my teaching aid teachers to support the children in their learning process. At the same time, I have also parents who come and tell me their child has not been tested, but they are interested in these topics and they are interested in taking on these enrichment classes for their children. And I'll say, go ahead, let the children join. My answer to these parents is always very simple. A lot of time is giving the children opportunity to try new things. And because of the social context in my classes, when we run the classes at Purdue in the US, my classes for kindergarten is only 10 students. I will have 1 teacher and 1 aide in the class, which means I have attention of 5 kids and 1 adult. And so my teachers is able to know each of the kids very well, all the children very well, and she's able to tailor and scaffold the teaching to the needs of the children. And this is where she can really stretch and develop each child to the best they can be. So the children may come in very different, in terms of giftedness. However, in the same time, they could be sitting in the same class, learning the same topic, and be driven by each other so that they could push and develop further. So the lesson was structured in itself in that sense. Social emotional is another kind of asynchronous development. children who grew up in a single child family has a very different social skills from a child who grows up, with a large group of siblings, emotional strength as well, and that is very much depending on what kind of environment the children are brought up in. So imagine in a classroom where you have 40 kids in a normal situation or 30 kids in a normal situation. All this will add on to the stress of the environment where the teacher is trying to work with the students to find out what it is and how can they develop them. But in a situation where in the enrichment class that I've taught in the US, we are small scale enough so that the parents and children and teachers are able to work together to help the child develop their potential. Another thing we can think about with gifted children is the multi-potentiality. This is something that's a lot of parents will find that is a big struggle, because a lot of these children with gifts and talents, they are interested in many things. They are great in many things as well. Especially if we are trying to decide on for them or decide with them, where are they going to go in the future? They have so many interests. Today they want to be a chef. Tomorrow they want to be an astronaut. The next day they may want to be a doctor, and the next day they may want to be a software engineer or robotics engineer. It could be so many things. And so there's a balance between that. The parents will find that you need to find a balance between the exploration of more than one interest and the over-involvement in another. So what I would always like to tell the parents is, do not pigeonhole your children. If the children is interested in astronauts and rockets and all that, go forth, help the child, give the child the different avenues, the books, the support they want to. But at the same time, don't forget to introduce different things to your children. Try to bring in different topics, try to bring in different areas. You can talk about space, you can talk about astronaut, and you can talk about plants as well. How can the astronaut grow their own food in space? How can they bake a cake in space if they are interested, and things like that. So to help the kids to think beyond one interest, because then it becomes a very pigeonhole, and the kids may have other areas and other abilities that you never really explore or find out. But at the same time, you do not want to over-involve. That means today you do music, and then tomorrow the kid's going to do something else, and every day is different. And the kids never really settle to figure out where their strength is. So it's a very delicate balance between both. Work with the children, I always say that, because the children know what they're interested in. If they're interested in something, feed it. But at the same time, put in other areas to make sure that the child is not eating only French fries for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You really want to, you definitely want to throw in a few broccolis here and there. So the other thing that you need to probably is teach the kids is how to manage their multi-potentiality and to prevent overextension. That means do not stretch your kids so thin. Knowing something in depth is always a good thing, is rather than the inch thick and 6 foot deep kind. So you want to make sure that you do not overextend the kids. Keep the kids challenged, but not stretched so thin that they are not able to make sense of the learning that's taking place. The best kind of learning is learning that is needed. Just-in-time learning is always good. Learning that's connected to their interests. So if you can find a way of connecting the interests, perfect. If not, you may want to think about maybe this is something for the long run or something for the future. It's not something that you want to think about right now. Of course, like I mentioned just now, it can make future planning difficult. Especially if you're working with 5-year-old, I tell you, do not worry about this. Their future career goals will change every other day or month, so to say. But if you're working with older kids, children who are already at a path where they are more or less decided on where they are, and some kids are that way. I know of 12 years old who know for sure what they want to do in the future, until they discover, nope, they don't like blood, and CSI is not going to make it. So some children are that driven. They know what they want, but at the same time, they need to understand the real world situation, and this is where you can start. If they are very confident that this is something they're interested in, look into how and what are the career prospects in that general area, and this is where you can start making introducing more than one areas for them or something different to stretch them, to get them thinking a bit further. The children are not afraid of thinking. They are often very eager to think and learn. it's the parents often that find that, oh, my child is interested in being a doctor. Yes, we made it, and that's, push all the medical stuff towards the child. But who knows what's going to happen in the long run. And a lot of times we always like to remind parents and teachers is that we are educating for a future that we do not know. And all I can do right now is help the child, give them the skills that they need to make good decisions, to make rational choices as they grow up. So what can we do? First thing, recognize them. Gifted children with gifts and talents are very different from gifted children in the traditional sense that we have defined here in Singapore, especially with our academic focus. So what I would say is recognize that children have different comes in different shapes, sizes, levels of achievement. They are really different. And in the world of giftedness, we always have, like, even for if a child is gifted, we have what I call gifted and exceptionally gifted. So it comes even within the gifted, levels, the different spectrum. So you need to be aware of who these children are, what kind of characteristic they do have. This is where I first started on my journey towards giftedness. Is where I got my GT certification at Purdue University, and that's where I'm certified to teach gifted children. And it comes with a lot of strategies that we have, that we need to address, that we need in order to address their needs and the issues and concerns that the gifted children have. We need to recognize especially asynchronous development and the potential distress. You have no idea how many temper tantrum I have to address in the kindergarten class, in a first grader class or primary 1 class, where the child has the mental capacity to challenge, to think, to create in the brain, but not the physical ability to do it with their hands. It is such a struggle for young children, especially when they want to make something and their hands are not able to do it. It's not that they see often as a failure upon themselves, and that's where the problem is, because they felt that they are not good enough at that sense. But a lot of times it's because they are just not able to handle the physical part of it. And so how can we make or help the children recognize that distress and help them to work it through? The support, it has to be there. The parents will have to be there in that sense, which is why we always talk about parents try to avoid being too judgmental and critical about it. Remember, these are all children. A lot of the young children that we are working with, a lot of the young children that you have are children. Do not judge them based on what you know now as an adult or the life experiences that you have as an adult. Young children are very different. They have a different set of experience, and the responses they can give you is based on their experiences. So you have to understand from their perspective as well, that it is a different world for them, and it's a very different situation when it comes to whether they are matured, the idea of maturity for them. Encourage them. We will say encourage play, join them in play, and this is something that we find challenging as adults, to play with the kids. We sort of, it's such a long time ago that we enjoy actually the idea of play. So how do you to sit down with them, to play with them, is something that will be very good in helping you to develop that bonding with the children, as well as getting them to understand that, for you to understand that the different development issues they may have that you will not see if you sit down. So putting them in the play corner, so to say, is not encouraging them to play. Join them, then you will learn more. Observe, even if you are not joining them, watch them play. You will see the different personality of the children. You will see the different way the children think and behave, and that is a lot more telling than what you see sometimes when they do in their classroom work and things like that, because that is where they are most comfortable and most natural. Encourage non-competitive activities. A lot of times, if you are the middle child, if you're the youngest child, if you're the eldest child, parents will end up comparing the children. Even if you are the only child that in the classroom, you're like, why is this child above and below and things like that. Recognize that the children are different. Recognize the children develop differently. Yes, you can compare because you do need to know where your child stands in terms of age peers. However, it is not everything. You will have to think about it in terms, you may have to think about it in terms of how can you let the children grow without thinking that everything has to be a winning situation. Again, the non-competitive activities can actually help them to develop a sense of intrinsic motivation. You're creating for the process rather than creating for the product. So rather than focus in making a vase or making a picture, the idea of the drawing itself should be the focus. So as you draw, so rather than set like, oh, end of the day, I must produce a product, set it in a way that you can encourage the non-competitive activities by continuous learning. Draw it, okay, let's think about it. A few days later, we can come back and review. So that there's never a full ending, and so that the kids understand that your life is not, it's not towards working always towards the end goal, but there could be a process of revise and review, which is very comfortable for children, especially for those who are perfectionist tendency, that they have a chance to review what they are doing, to revise what they are doing, and that allows them a sense of comfort and slowly build up their confidence in that sense. Offer non-evaluative judgment of support, statements of support. Support the children. Do not just judge them on whether they are good or not as good or something along the line, but really support them in terms of recognizing where they are, that they are growing, they are children, they are developing, and then where can they grow, where can they develop, how they can develop further in that sense. Be someone different from adults who seems to be occupied with their performance or non-performance. Don't just wait for test results to be out and then ask them how are they doing in school. Do not just like based on their test results or exam results and then judge them on why are they not doing so well, what kind of tuition they need to support their learning. The kind of adults who only ask the child, how can you improve, rather than the words how can you improve. Think about it is how can you grow, where are your interests, how can I help support you in that way. That will be different in a sense, so that they understand that the fact that they are again, take the attention away from the end point, but on the learning process. Remember, gifted children love to learn. So as long as you push them towards areas they are interested in, as long as they are learning, they are often very willing to listen and to try. But if you keep focusing on how are they performing, what's the end products, what is the test score they are getting, then it becomes a very turn off to some of the gifted children, gifts and talents, because then they see why is it that that's all the parents or that's all the adults care about is the end point. And slowly the passion, the learning, the love for learning, the thirst for learning will get sort of filtered away. And pay attention to them in the presence. Do not say, I'll talk to you 5 minutes later. You can do that if you're busy and things like that, but give them the attention that they need at the presence, because again, they are only children once. You miss them now, you'll miss them. There's moments that you won't come back. Over at Jerry at the summer camp, the enrichment programs I have, like I said, I work with children who was age 4 all the way up. And I see some of these children who come back year after year, program after program to, taking up the different classes that we offer. And we literally see the boys, the girls from 5-year-old, learning how being so cute the way they are, learning how to hold a pair of scissors, trying to cut a straight line, pasting glue and getting glue all over everywhere but where they should have the glue on, to where they are now in primary 4, primary 5, and they are doing dissection of animals. They are doing, they are learning about the biosystem, and they are learning about different things that are so much more advanced. And knowing that the growth that they have over time, you realize that you really cannot miss them. You really have to pay attention to what they are doing at that moment in order to know how they will be able to fit in the long run. Which is why when we have parents who sign up their kids, I have like 3.5-year-old who wanted to attend some of the classes. or 4 years old, and I will say, if you come to us before, let me see your kids, let me listen to your kid, and I'll tell you whether they will be able to handle the demand of the classes. Because while we do put an age cutoff at 4 years old, I do admit younger kids who have been with us for the Saturday program or the parents program, because I know the kids. When we know the kids, the teachers know the kids, we know how to work with them. And this is where the presence again comes in. You have to know your kids. When you do know your kids, and then you can tell me, like, what do you think is their gifts and potential, and how do you want to help them to develop them as well. Communicate with them. Listen. And this is both verbal and non-verbal. A lot of times the non-verbal cues tells you a lot more about the children than the verbal cues. What they say, how they say it, how they stand when they say it. As parents, I'm sure all of you have this experience where the kids say something and you know for sure it is not the truth. They are trying to avoid a situation. It's not like they are purposefully lying, although they are, but they are really just trying to avoid an unhappy situation for themselves, which is understandable. So look out for these verbal cues. When they say they are interested in something, are they saying it because they think that's what you want, or are they saying it because that's what they want? You have no clue how, when I have classes on Saturdays with the children, again, I know straight off who are the children who are in the classroom because the parents enrolled them, and who are the children in the classroom because they chose their topic, or they chose their class because they are interested in learning. It is very different in terms of behaviors. The unwilling children, so to say, will be screaming and kicking. They'll be the first one with the heads on the table, not paying attention. And often when I speak to these children, they are there because the parents say so. A lot of times I will ask them again, like, is there a topic they are more interested in rather than what their parents enrolled them in? And then we'll see whether we can move them to a different classroom, because there's no point in wasting the children's time, and it changed the whole class dynamics where you see a student who's not interested in the same classroom as you. So listen to the kids, ask the kids, and don't just pay lip service where you say, yes, I hear you. Truly hear them and try to help and try to understand from their point of view as well. Again, this is asking a lot for some parents, because they are not used to thinking of the kids having a mind of their own, or being able to make decisions. The kids do. The kids understand what they like, what they don't like. The kids know a lot of things, but what they do know are limited by their experiences, which is why there's always this trial and error, and which is why they keep getting into trouble, because of this limited knowledge or limited life experience that they have, where they have to constantly test boundary or push the boundaries. So talk to kids, get to know them, listen to them, and then know how they think, so that you can be better equipped to help them. Make statements, avoid questions. If you're asking questions, use open-ended ones. What, how? A lot of times, one thing I always like to ask parents, what kind of conversations do you have with your children? End of the school day, how many of you often ask, how's your day in school? And your kids answer with so nothing. Did anything happen in school? Nothing. You learn anything? Nothing. That's always the best learning. Nothing is learned, nothing is done, nothing is reflected. So rather than ask how, that kind of open question, be very specific sometimes. If you are wanting to find out more about your children, if you want to find out about what they have done, ask them about activities they have done. Who do you sit with? What do you do? What do you have for lunch? What kind of games do you play? What kind of lessons did the teacher teach? Very specific question to start the conversation going. And then once the kids are comfortable, they will start telling you things. If they know you are listening, they are more willing to share. Often, there's also a group of kids that you can't get them to keep quiet for any period of time for that matter. But those kids, again, you need to look through at what are they saying. Is it things that are meaningful, or are they just having to fill the void with their voice? So that with that group of children, you will have to have a different skills, different set of questions to get them to control their thinking. That means think before they ask a question or think before they speak. Is it necessary? Is it what kind of statement are they making? Is it for information or asking for information? What it is. Reflects their feeling. Emotional growth, young children, they will have ups and downs. You will have all your good days and bad days, and it all could be because they couldn't find their favorite shirt or their favorite pair of socks or something like that. But as adults, we have our good days and bad days as well, and we learn how to control it over time with our life experiences. We do not go into the office and throw tantrum because our coffee is not at the right temperature. But we know what is acceptable and what's not acceptable because of life experiences we have. Help the children rationalize that, look at their feelings. If they're upset, ask them why, but not when they're crying. If a child is already crying and things like that, they can't express themselves well. Wait for them to calm down. Let them calm down. Help them, give them the words, especially with emotions. Teach them the words to help them be aware of the emotion they are feeling and how to verbalize it rather than just crying. Because end of the day, we all know crying doesn't really solve the issue unless you give it to them all the time and then they realize that's the trick that they can use to get what they want. Check for accuracy and paraphrase, summarize. So end of the day, ask them, like, is this what you meant? Am I correct to say this? Summarize for them so that they are hearing their own words back as well, that they are thinking about and what they are thinking about and such. Stop what you're doing and listen actively. A lot of times we'll be on our work and say, talk to me while I'm working or talk to me while typing. That doesn't recognize the kids' worth. It takes away from them what they are contributing to a conversation. So we'll say, if you have, if your day is very busy, maybe structure a time over dinner table or something like that, where you really sit down and talk with the children. And, that could be a common time where you all share information about your day. If you want to start with your day so that you role model the conversation, you role model what kind of information you share and what kind of information you're expecting the children to share with you as well. Help them figure things out, but do not catastrophize. Do not make it drama. Do not over drama the kids. I always like to say, parents who like to baby talk. When I say baby talk, I don't mean just goo goo gaga. I mean when you use tonal words in overly. That means your tones go up and down like those young children programs, so that you keep the children entertained. Try not to do that with gifted children because it can be very annoying, and it sort of belittle their thinking and their emotions. So just treat them calmly as an adult. You do not go into to start a conversation with adults. Oh my God, how do you feel today? You don't do that. So don't do that to the young children as well. Do not catastrophize. Treat them normally. Treat them talk to them normally. What happened today? Why do you think it happens? How can you prevent it? Is that is there any action that you could have done to prevent it? Figuring things out that way so that it becomes something that it gives them the skills that they need to handle the situation, so that they have to handle the situation in the long run or in the next run, so that they do not fall in the same trap or keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. Differentiate for them. Not so much our parents, but this is something that you may want to consider when you talk to your schools or look at what the school teachers are doing. So acknowledging that students learn at different speeds and they differ widely in their ability to think or understand complex ideas is simple. It's the same as acknowledging that students at any given age is not of the same height. It is not a statement of worth, but a statement of reality. It is a very real situation. I have never seen a situation where I have a classroom of identical students thinking at the same speed, doing the same thing at the same time, at the same rate of learning. Not possible. And trust me, if we have that situation, it will be so much easier to do any research studies on young children, but we don't. And there's so many factors that comes into play. The family background, the family culture, the society they grew up in, the friends that they have, the materials they have access to. All this shape how the children think and learn. And that's why we talk about when we want to teach children, think about 3 areas. even when this is something that you may want to do at home at yourself. Think of things that appeal to the children. What appeals to them? What are the choices they have? They always want choices. Like adults, you don't want to be told what you want, what you should do. Children want to have a choice of what they want to do. And are they sufficiently challenged? So right now we are promoting the idea of differentiation, and a lot of time it's just planning and making sure that we have different materials suited for different students' needs, and they address all the of effective needs as well as learning needs. So we're not just talking about academic learning, but social emotional learning as well. Learning how to handle failures, learning how to handle disruption, learning how to handle different kinds of classmates or friends, learning how to handle various social situations. Remember, your children are not going to grow up in a vacuum. They are going to go out into society, and they have a lot of their age peer around them with different life experiences, and they have to learn to work with young children, or with people from different age groups and different ability range. And sometimes with my gifted children, when we sit down and have conversation with them, and they do struggle with that, they simply couldn't understand why is it that the teacher is going so slowly in class, and why do the rest of the class do not get what the teacher is saying, or not at the first go. So some of the resources and services that we offer right now in terms of professional services, we do not have anything locally within Singapore or Asia, but these are professional association for gifted children that you can look into. Online, they have resources, they have tips, they have materials that talks about gifted children and various needs. So the National Association for Gifted Children, coincidentally, their conferences right now, and I do have some presentations there. They have a lot of resources in terms of teachers training, as well as standards to evaluate programs and teachers who are serving gifted children. Council for Exceptional Children works with children with gifts as well as children with learning disability. So Twice Exceptional Children, there's a lot of services that is available in the US, again, not so much here that I know of, that handles the children. On the worldwide scale, we have the World Council for Gifted and Talented Children. They also have resources, and they do try to consolidate different definition and different limitations of the way different countries define giftedness and how are the children identified. So you'll be interested, if you're interested, you will see a lot of the different perception of what giftedness is and how it's defined. In Singapore, like I said, we only test in primary 3 and we only serve them in primary 4 onwards. But before that, I always say, don't tell me a child before primary 3 is never gifted. European Council for High Ability, this is a growing area. So I said, this is where the European Council will have their own conferences, researchers researching about gifted children on how to better identify and serve them. We also have programs for young children. Currently, again, this is something that GERC is developing, but we are not there yet. We are working right now on a few ideas, and if you're interested, you will be able to find out more at the end or email us at the end. But overseas, we have different programs. Purdue University, the Gifted Education Research and Resource Institute, GERC, which is where I work. We have youth program in the summer. So the young children program that I mentioned that I work with and that I'm in charge of usually takes place in June. So it will be 2 weeks of June, and then it's a day camp, so the kids will go home. We do not keep the kids overnight for that age group. But the older kids, so all the way we serve from age 4 kindergarten all the way to JC level, and for the older kids, it's a residential camp where they sign up for different classes they're interested in, and again, the focus is talent development and not just academic. Next is Duke. Duke has a talent identification Duke tip program. So this is some other service that they have. Again, a lot of these centers, Northwestern as well, runs programs in the summer. The only problem that we sometimes is that their summer programs runs in July. And as we know, Singapore schools starts in July. So this is something that you may want to think about if you have younger kids, that's the program that you may want to consider sending the kids to. As parents, these are things that you can do and think about right now, is think about how do you have a learning space at home. where a children can have a routine and a structure to learn. Remember, learning doesn't take place only in school. Then when they come home, they stop learning or something like that. The kids need to, for children with gifts and talents, they are always interested in learning. They need to learn, and they need a place for them to have their own learning, the way of learning set up for them, and a routine for them. So consider creating even a small little table. Let them have this table for themselves, and so that they understand this is where they can document, where they can put in place anything they're interested in, and they want to ask more for more knowledge and things like books, access to books even. Understand your child uniqueness. All children have gifts and talents, but not all children will be recognized for them. Like I always tell my parents, if we still live in a caveman era, a child who is good in calculating math will not be as well received as a child who is able to run and hunt the biggest mammoth and elephants. Simple, because the whole idea of gifts and talents is determined by society, and it changes as society change. Right now, we recognize the academic giftedness in terms of topics, math and science. But in the long run, where we are shifting towards programming and thinking and reasoning skills, your math and science may be a bit dated. And even if you think about it, even PISA right now is looking at how students are assessing students in terms of global awareness. That itself is something very new, and with children, for young children with gifts and talents, that could be something they are already interested in, but because the school never tests, parents never recognize it, the teachers never recognize it, and it never surface up in the future. Use research-based parenting strategies. That's one thing that we always recommend, is that we don't say something is the best practice, because there's always something better, there's always something advanced. But what is research-based? Based on research, what do we know about the children? Based on research, what do we know about how gifted children works? And what works with one child may not work with another. So there is always a whole spectrum of strategies. And as teachers for gifted children, I can tell you there is so much tools out there that we use to work with gifted children, because every child will be different. If you need any advice on where to start, we have the GERC consultation session, which will give you the tools that you can help your children to develop their talents. So basically what you can do today, when you go home, or basically you're home right now, beware of over scheduling. Help the children learn to conquer their boredom. The kids are able to self-entertain, and they should be able to self-entertain. A lot of times we are worried the child is bored, so we keep putting more toys, more books in front of them. Let them be bored and choose, so they understand the choices they make and have to think for themselves. Beware of over-functioning. Let them learn, make the mistakes, fail. It's always good for them to experience failure at a younger age, where they can bounce back quickly, rather than at an older age where they experience failure for the first time, and then it's the whole world shatter and collapse in front of them, kind of failure. But at a young age, today they fail, tomorrow they try again. That's a very good recovery, and it helps them to build a sense of resilience and self-confidence. Support effort, focus on strength and not problems. Look at what your child is good at. Not just what the child is not good at. My child cannot do this yet. Why is it that every other kids can do this, my child can't? Yes, that could be an issue that you will want to work on. But at the same time, what is it that your child can do? Where is your child putting the effort? And this is something that you will want to think about. Okay. With that, that's the end of my presentation. I think I have about 10 minutes or so for questions and answers. And yes, that will be my presentation. Let me get out the sharing. Hi, okay. So this is where we go into question and answer, maybe. If there's any questions from any of you. I can't hear anything. How do I do this? I think there's a chat function. So if you want to, you can type your question at the chat function, and then I can try to answer them. Will that help? So there's a question from an attendee. Is your sharing more applicable for younger kids? I would say yes, because with younger kids, there's a lot more potential. And I would always say we try to work with the kids as young as possible. Literally, I would recommend anything from age 4, 5 years old and above, simply because that's the age where they are starting to really verbalize themselves, and you will start seeing all the growth spurt. So kids who are exceptional in verbal, who are able to articulate full literacy and things like that, they will be reading very fast, they'll be talking very much, they will be expressing themselves a lot. And this is where they truly have no boundaries, where they really push, or I should say, they truly are pushing the boundaries. The older they get, what we discover is that the kids starts conforming. They will see what is normal for other people, other children, and they start hiding their talents because they feel that they are not part of the group anymore. That is something that will be challenging as they get older. So we recommend, if you're doing talent development, start at a young age. As they get older, the kids are more fixed in their mindset. They start conforming. Sometimes you do not see as much potential because they start shutting down before you even have a chance to develop it. Another question, is this MOE certified? No. I have taught in MOE. I'm a trained teacher. My teacher's teaching cert and everything. But this is something very different from MOE, and I'm not working towards to get MOE certified because MOE is very academic driven, like I said before. And with MOE system, you will have you already have a very well developed program to support students who are academically gifted. But with children who are differently gifted, giftedness, they are not so easily tested out by your math and your science or your English. How are you going to help these children develop the thinking skills and rational skills? Simply because they are not gifted. They are not gifted in academic world. Doesn't mean they are not gifted. What we are trying to do is find out where can they be gifted, and how can we help them develop that potential. There's strategies to keep emotional outbursts, and so there's 2 questions here that are pretty similar. If my kid lie, how do you approach it? If there's emotional outbursts, how do you approach it? So basically with 2 things, these 2 things to me are very similar, because a lot of times it's figuring out how the kids work. So especially with emotional outbursts, and it's really just to let the kid play it out. A lot of times people judge you. As humans, as adults, we feel judgment from other adults. When the kids is screaming and crying, all I will do is I will stand there and wait. To me, it is a situation where you do not want to give up your control. The minute you go down to the kids and you start negotiating, you are down to the kids' level. That's where the problems is. You stand back, you wait. The kids will soon realize that this is not a tactic that they can use. Same thing with the lying. You just wait. The kids, you don't have to say a thing. The kids know that you know that they are lying, and they will try to spin more tales, and you just wait and you wait it out. And if you can't wait out, question them for the lying part. But for the emotional, you wait, and then after that, calm down and then talk to them. Again, like I said, this has to do with some background as well, that you need to teach them the words to use. If you want something, what are the words you can use? If you feel something, what are the words you can use, rather than just crying, rather than throwing a temper tantrum? What are the words you can use to express your feeling? Because explain to them again that you are not them. You cannot feel what they are feeling. You cannot see what they are seeing. They only can tell you, and then from there, through the words, you can help them with it. And recognize that you're helping them, and not just telling them what to do. You're helping them understand, process it, and what to do. So here's an interesting question: is how do I know if my child is gifted or versus good enough for private tuition to do well in school? So here's the thing: I'm not asking you to one or the other. I'm a very practical person as well. I'm a Singaporean born here. So I understand the paper chase. I understand the need for paper qualification. And now that I've graduated with my PhD and everything, the more I understand the need for paper qualification, because that really helps you to take that first step. Without my previous training, without my BA, without all the things that I've done previously, I would not have done that PhD. So I understand the need for paper qualification. What I'm asking for is, that's why I say it's a talent development program. It helps the child to develop talent and potential where it's not within the system. So while the system teach you math and science and English and things like that, what we are pushing for is the teaching of thinking skills. How can you be critically aware, the critical awareness? How can you be creative in providing solutions? How can you forecast a future or plan? So these are skills that are important, but not necessarily taught in school, and definitely not taught in tuition centers. If I have a gifted child, how do I ensure that? Calm it down. Even my professor will tell you this, because we go to schools to do enrichment programs in schools as well. Not enrichment programs in schools. We go to schools to teach teachers how to teach gifted kids, and in terms of grouping the children by ability and such. And the teachers are always concerned that we have the kind that will be boastful and elitist attitude and things like that. Honestly, for all the gifted children I work with, a lot of times the children reflects the parents' attitude. Most of the kids I work with are very nice, very humble, and they want to share their learning. They do not think they are very different. They see themselves as kids who are just better at drawing, that's all. So if you keep telling the kids he's fantastic in drawing, he's the best your artist in the whole wide world, their child will come out with an inflated attitude. But if you treat it as, this is your gift, but know that you have other weaknesses, calm them down that way. You are good at drawing, but you can't play sports for nuts, okay? You can't do this, you can't do that. It may not help that much, but if the kids want to, some of them will say, okay, this is something I want to develop in, and recognize that they are good at something, they are not good at others. Everybody have different strengths and weaknesses. I said before, my teaching, I've taught in RI, and I teach the gifted art students. And I make sure that they understand that if there's all kinds of good, there's good that are extremely good, that means, super realistic, but that's only because I'm looking for super hyper realism. But if I'm looking for abstract work, that good is no longer as good. So even within, the gifted spectrum, a child who's good in math, good in which area of math? All areas? Are you, find out where there's always gaps. Find the gaps, and then, this is something that they need to think about. There's always somebody out there who's better. Let me see. Is there another one that I want? I think, do we have time? Did I address every question that's in here? Are there programs to train? Okay, there's one question here. Are there programs we can train my child to be gifted in an area? This is not a training program. This is a talent development program. Basically, I don't train your kids. Our children are born with gifts and talents. That's the stand that we always take, or I always take. All we need to do is find out where the gifts and talents is and see how we can help develop it. It is not training. It is very much a talent development. So if your child is talented in art, you will see very early the drawing ability, the way they can describe their artwork and things like that. And that will be where you want to help your child develop for their talent. And if that's the case, art lessons and etc. will be the area you may want to consider. If your child is exceptional in physical development in terms of sports, very good ball sense, can control the ball, can do all kinds of things with a basketball, that might be where the child is talented in, and that will be something that you really want to develop your child in the long run. So it's really very much looking at the child, working with the children to find out where their talent is, and then figuring out what kind of programs is suitable to teach them. In terms of people who are academically gifted, you have your maths and science, but what else can we do in terms of creativity thinking, challenges, projections, scientific thinking skills, all kinds of thinking that we can have to help the children. So during the consultation session, what we can do is, based on the consultation, we can assess your child to find out in which area your child has potential for giftedness. And then what we provide is a list of recommendation of actions that can be taken. We'll give you a whole suggestions and things like that to help you to decide what you want to do. So end of the day, I always give it back to the parents, because you are the parent of the child. Are you the kind of parents who just want the child to grow up developing their talents, fulfilling their calling or talent in whatever areas? Or are you the type of parents who still prefer the child to be within the system of, progressing along the educational pathway that Singapore has already set out? And then with those two types of mindset, there are two extreme ends. Of course, you could be anywhere in the spectrum, within the two ends. With those two mindset in mind, then the suggestion will be very different. So if you are kind who wants your child to continue to do well in PSLE, get into RI, get into RGS, then my challenge to you will be how are you supporting the child learning beyond what the school is already doing? Not just by giving them advanced material, but also really teaching them the skills they need to process the materials they're given, rather than just blind learning of materials. Do you have any programs I can send my child for this holiday? How do I go about? Okay, for the programs and enrichment, we are currently working on it. So if you're interested, join our mailing list, and we'll send information to you about the programs and outings. We are planning something along that line to help parents, to sort of getting a feel of what talent development is about. So if you're interested, we'll get in touch that way. How do I get about my child tested? Again, because this is a talent development program, I don't recommend testing, especially at a young age, because there's enough. A lot of the tests are not norm on Asians. A lot of the tests are not norm with different groups of people, based on SES classes and things like that. So there's always issues with tests. There's always error, and especially at a young age, depending what age you are testing, the children are still learning and still developing. So it's not going to be fair to a child if you test him at 4 years old. Oh, he's not gifted. It could simply mean that he was never given the opportunities to discover where his talent is. So I would say don't test, but really learn to observe your child. You are the best test, in fact. Unless you're trying to qualify for an academic program like the GEP program, where they have to be gifted to be, based on the GEP test. Or else, a lot of the programs that the summer programs that we do, we don't really need a test to figure out the child. What we are more interested in is the passion for learning. If the child is interested in learning, it doesn't matter to me whether the child is gifted or not, because then I know the child can learn that whatever he needs, or he or she needs to achieve in what they can. I think we are almost time, or actually we're over time right now. So what do I do? Do I stop? Why should I be bothered? Okay, this will be the last question I answer then. Why should I be bothered with testing for non-gifted or non-academic gifted gifts? Singapore is very practical. I agree. I totally agree with you. However, my question to you is, are you sure that your child will be staying in Singapore, or is Singapore, we are talking now about globalization. If you are equipping your child only for survival within the Singapore context, that is actually a very limited view for your child. The world is such, people are now remote working from all over the world. People are now traveling all over the world. People, even with COVID-19, I'm still working with my colleagues in the US. The time difference is terrible, but people are working beyond Singapore context. And yes, while Singapore is very practical, and I agree, they need their first steps. But in the long run, what are the skills that is transferable? The skills that I learned, I can honestly tell you, one of the best lessons I learned in school is the chord thinking skills, where I'm taught how to consider all factors plus interesting my points. And that stays with me up to now. Every time I'm called to make a decision, I have to think of all factors. I make my judgment that way and things like that. And that skill is more important than the math, differentiation, calculus, algebra that I've learned, all the way through JC, or the physics, aerofoil and whatnot that I learned in JC, which never stayed. But the thinking skills, the reasoning skills, the forecasting skill, the planning skills stayed. And they are so much more transferable to different areas of my life and my work than just academic, which is why the talent development part talks about meta-cognition characteristics, whether your child are developing that. Okay, I think with that questions, we are going to end the session. So thank you for attending, and we are going to send out a survey to all the participants who enter this webinar. And if you fill out the survey, we will be giving out a free online consultation session worth $149. So that might be something that interests you. So thank you very much.